Hey everybody, this is Blake here, and welcome to my review of The Woman in Black 2 Angel of Death. So, I was a fan of The Woman in Black. It's one of the few modern day paranormal themed horror movies I actually enjoyed. And by modern day, I probably should clarify that I refer to the time period it was made and not the time period it took place in. But I can't really say I was all that interested in a sequel. Uh, Good or bad, The Woman in Black was not franchise material. Everything we needed to know about, or everything we could know about the Woman in Black herself, we learned in the first movie, from her origins to her motivations to the extent of her abilities. Where else can you go from there? It seemed like the only solutions would be to either have her haunt a different location, which would be really stupid considering that was one of the major appeals in regards to the first film, um, or they could change the time period, maybe have it take place during the present, which would be retarded as um, one of the reasons or a lot of people even bothered with watching The Woman in Black was because it was a throwback to the old Hammer horror movies of the 60s. Um, so that just seems like that would alienate a lot of their original fan base. Or they could always go the really lazy route, which is just to pretty much give us the exact same shit that we got before, cover all the same bases from the first film, and hope nobody notices or cares. Another reason I am very skeptical is it really feels like the only reason The Woman in Black 2 was made was because Hammer has been struggling financially since releasing the first film. So they're just falling back on what is, I believe, their only real hit since their current revival. And then, of course, the reviews came in, and at first I was actually a little hopeful simply because it seemed like the reviews were more mixed than negative, but unfortunately, as more and more people saw it, the more and more opinion seemed to go spiral downwards. So immediately, I prepared myself for a bad movie, and shocking, a bad movie is what I got. But strangely, it didn't piss me off. I'd say it's on the same level that Annabelle is, and in fact, I might even go ahead and call Annabelle the superior movie, because that film does have a few good scenes that are worth watching in themselves if you could find them like on YouTube. But in the case of The Woman in Black, there really was nothing about it that I thought was particularly well done. It was never scary. I mean, yeah, a few of the jump scares got me, but that's going to happen most of the time. So why? Why did I just feel so emotionally divorced that by the time I was finished with the movie and was going home, I didn't feel annoyed, anger, frustrated? Whereas with Annabelle, if you've seen the vlog, you should know that I was furious. um, I have a theory on that, and I'll come back to that later. Anyway, why does The Woman in Black 2 suck? Well, simple reason. It's not scary at all. Whereas the first film relied on atmosphere, this one is just jump scare after jump scare after jump scare. If you think like scary faces suddenly appearing on the camera is like terrifying, then you might think The Woman in Black 2 is a scary movie. But like the first one, it just seemed like it was more creative in how it built suspense and how it frightened its viewers. I loved the bits like where the kid comes out of the marsh, how they use the dog who just start growling at some unseen menace, and that movie was relatively simple in terms of its screenplay. It was for the most part just another you know modern day ghost film in terms of the script and its presentation, but all the creativity went into the scares, and I found the bits like where you'd randomly see the woman in black kind of in the background to be just thoroughly unsettling, and even though there's a little bit of that here, it just doesn't seem as clever, and it just felt like they were only doing that because the first film did. And it was weird too because one of the awesome aspects of the first film was the location. The house was very beautiful, but haunting at the same time. There was something sinister about it, even though you could tell that this was once a very nice place. Well, the Woman in Black 2, it actually did change the time period, but instead of taking place during the present, it took place during World War II. Well, okay, that's not as bad, but the house is dilapidated to such a point that it just resembles a normal haunted house that you've seen in all of these movies. There's absolutely nothing distinct about it anymore, whereas in the first film, there was a lot more color, a lot more design to it, and it just stood out. I vividly remember what that house looked like, whereas just a few days after I've seen The Woman in Black 2, I can't remember a damn thing about this house. Not that the film really wants you to pay attention to the setting too much, because it's more interested once again in those scary faces popping up on the screen. And the marsh really disappointed me. There was times where I was actually wondering if this was filmed in the same place. I believe it was, but I never bothered confirming that, because it didn't have as many of those wide shots where you saw the marsh and the house together, where you saw it in all of its glory. When you see the marsh in this film, it's never with the house. You just kind of get a medium shot to where you know, okay, this is the same area, but at the same time, it just no longer looks impressive. The director seems just completely uninterested in it. And, the first film, built atmosphere by, creating fog and, having a lot of fun messing with the weather. This movie does none of that. It's always nice out, sunny out. It was a thoroughly boring looking movie. So that was very disappointing. And one thing with The Marsh 2 that I thought was really cool in the first film was when the tide came in, the character was trapped there, so that started creating feelings of isolation and, how that would affect his, mind, while also being haunted by this ghost. But that never really came to play in The Woman in Black 2. They occasionally do mention the tide coming in, but they were never really trapped there. They could have left. They just chose not to until it became so serious that everybody realized, yeah, we got to get out of here. And then there was no problem leaving. So that was just a whole other level of suspense that the film just discarded. So it's pretty much just, in terms of its scare tactics, it's not ripping off the first film as much as the screenplay is, but it's so bland in terms of its scare output. I seriously believe that the director just doesn't have any talent for horror. And I'm not saying that the director is untalented. There are areas where I felt that he was more interested in, that if The Woman in Black 2 was a much different kind of movie, he would have been more comfortable with. So that's what I feel about that. In terms of the screenplay, I really, really hate it when characters spend the entire movie solving a mystery that we already know the answer to. Because we saw the first film. The first half of The Woman in Black 2 is pretty much them finding out, who the Woman in Black is, why she's doing this, and there's absolutely nothing that wasn't revealed in the first movie. And throughout the entirety of the film, it offers no new information about her. So like at one point when they do finally get up and leave, near the end, we're like, well, we know this is useless because the Woman in Black was seen going to other places in the first film. So why should we feel that hope and that it's over? And I know we're going to know that's not the case because, there's still like 20-30 minutes to go in the movie. But a good movie really does trick us into thinking that we're not supposed to be really analyzing too much, but because once again we saw the first film, we know where this is going to go, and then when it looks like they finally overcome the Woman in Black, I'm thinking, no, they haven't even really done anything to defeat her. They just escaped her for now, so of course it's not going to end on the happiest of notes. So the script was just lazy. This could have been good if they put more time and effort into it, but obviously Hammer was more interested in meeting a deadline, so uh, they just churned out a screenplay with minimum effort, and so I just kind of felt conned as a viewer. Give us something new to chew on, and every idea that could have been explored, that could have given it a different dynamic, the film just brings up and then ignores, such as the main girl believes that the Woman in Black is specifically targeting her because of her own troubled backstory, but that seemed like a major stretch, as what the Woman in Black was saying to her wasn't that much different from her usual catchphrase. So there could be so many different meanings there, and also, but I thought that maybe this meant the main girl was just kind of going crazy, because whenever she tries to make a point about there's somebody else on the island, she's acting like a total psychotic. So then naturally, whoever she's talking to will be like, "Woman, you're being a woman. Stop having these crazy ass visions." And that's never really done anything with either. I really only felt they bothered with that so they could have that cliche where nobody listens to her, because once again she's acting so crazy, therefore she must be crazy. So even though they could have gone areas with that, they just never did. Um, I will say this: they did try to flesh out the characters, but it's all done like just using an information dump where a character will spend an entire scene, explaining who they are, how they got there, and what their major character arc is going to be. A bit too heavy handed, but I think that's really why I didn't hate this as much as I hated Annabelle, because Annabelle felt like it was produced by a machine that generates soulless products based purely on cliches and conventions, whereas the attempts at fleshing out these characters did remind me that the screenwriters were in fact human. Uh, the filmmakers might not be very good, or they might just be in the wrong genre, but I did see the effort in that area, so that may have helped this movie go down a little bit more smoothly. It didn't make me care for the characters at all, because it was just a bit too manipulative, and they were just kind of bland and boring. Uh, but still, props for trying. There was something else I was going to say there too. Oh yeah, the dialogue I thought was really, really corny. Um, I felt like they were lifting lines from a soap opera, and I thought the actors were a little bit too broad, to where honestly at times I thought I was watching a soap opera. Um, so like there's some lines such as where the girl says, "This room, something about it feels sad." Really, do people really talk like that? And then the guy who she's talking to says, "Rooms don't feel sad, people do." And I just gagged. And the dialogue is full of all sorts of shit like that. But the acting, it's not conventionally bad like what we got from The Pyramid, which is also an inferior movie. But it's like they're just aspects that they play up too much. Like the main girl, she does fine throughout a lot of that, but she also seems a bit too angelic and perfect. But then once again, once she starts acting crazy, she just takes that too far. When the main guy starts kind of tearing up and panicking, it's just a little bit too forced, even though the rest of his acting is fine. Even the other woman who's like the head mistress in charge of the group, she's probably the best actress, but even she started to lose me a bit towards the end. But that's really, I think, all I have to say. It's just not a very good movie. I think that the filmmakers, their sensibilities seem to be more designed for drama, romance, preferably small screen drama, romance, preferably of the soap opera variety. But I just don't think they really know how horror works, and so we're imitating, what they've seen from other movies, and it felt really stale for it, and it's a total letdown from the first film that I was a little bit bored while watching, simply because once again, they were covering all these same points in the first movie, except the first movie did a lot better and made me care for the character and was a lot scarier. So I cannot bring myself to recommend The Woman in Black 2. If you must see it because you liked the first films so much, just wait until it comes out on the small screen. It wouldn't make a bad Netflix rental, but otherwise, like, if you were indifferent to the first film, or you might have liked it but you won't really care to see a sequel, then don't bother. It's just not a good movie. There's no reason to watch it. It's not good enough to watch, nor is it bad enough to really watch as a curiosity, like the Pyramid kind of was. But that's all I have to say. I did do a written review, so please read that. I've also done written reviews of I never remember. Samaritan Zatoichi, martial art or samurai-ish movie. It's not the correct term to use, but I reviewed that. Tekken 2, Kazuya's Revenge, and of course the Hobbit, the Battle of the Five Armies. And my next one should be either Ragnarok, a monster flick, or my worst movies list. I'm not sure if I'll film that yet or not, or if I'll just post it. That's another thing I've done too, is I did my favorite movies of the year, so read that. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later.